Hey again! This time I've been asked to answer a question how the Americans express their emotions, how myself as a foreigner, how I saw the differences between the other nationals expressing their emotions, how the Americans usually do that. Again, I'll refer to my experience working in the Bay Area, California, West Coast, and I know that it differs from those people from the other states in the US. But my impression, and I'll here limit my answer to two parts, would be that the Americans are pretty open and sincere when it comes to feedback. So once you are somehow dissatisfied with something happening in the professional area, you would usually think that, well, maybe the person was wrong, or my colleague got it wrong, or something was not quite clear, maybe next time it would be okay. So this is your general expectation, like if something goes wrong, you don't rush to your director straight away, or you don't go to speak to your subordinates straight away. At least in the Russian culture, which is more reserved when it comes to feedback, we have this tendency to, hide these things and wait for things to calm down themselves and things like that. But when it comes to the Americans, they are quite often more prone to give feedback, and I really appreciated that about them. But to me, this was a cultural shock when right after the very first experience we've had together, during the very first session we have conducted, my colleagues would come to me after the event and they would say, well, hi, now it's time for us to discuss what has happened. This was super good, this was not super good, next time please avoid this and please emphasize this as well. So that was cool, thanks a lot, next time we need to change it. So it was like shock to me in the beginning. So was that bad that somehow they gave me the feedback straight away and they rush into this? But I would say they are being they have this good intention to make things better, and generally this is this very open emotional culture of giving feedback. That is great, and I appreciate this about the Americans. So be ready to give feedback yourself, and be ready to perceive somehow very emotional feedback too. The other thing which I have also noticed is that there is a pretty strict difference between the emotions that they allow between themselves and the clients and between the team members. So in my understanding, it might seem from time to time that this client provider relationship is a bit insincere. So there's all smiles and open emotions about positive things, and they're all like, wow, this is so amazing, impressive story, thank you so much. But this goes back to my answer over what soft skills are important to the Americans, and this all goes back to this culture of support rather than disrespect and disapproval. This goes back to the culture of very let's call it low context culture, and this is a whole different story from intercultural communication theory. But anyways, there is this tendency to be overly positive emotional with your clients, and that is true. The Americans tend to be extremely emotional with their clients, but only in the positive sense. Very unusual, I would say, to meet the situation when other emotions are being expressed so clearly rather than the positive emotions. So that's the one thing. But when it comes to team member communication, I would say that's a different story. And I would say that the emotions have this spectrum, and sometimes you are not being that emotional to your team members, but you're being more constructive. And it's like there seems to be like a mask. You're communicating with your client and suddenly, boom, there is another person communicating to you like, hey, now it's time for us to discuss what we're going to do next. Let's plan for the next session. And you're like, wow, you've just expressed such a positive emotion towards the client. What has happened? But in fact, this is all about the culture of bringing positive energy towards your client to provider, provider to client communication. And there is the whole different story over communicating with your team members. So I would warn those people who would see this as insincerity against this opinion. I would say this is not about being insincere. This is moreover knowing the degree of communication with your client and with the team members. So when it comes to charging your client with the energy, that's very obvious that you're tending to be like more open, more cheerful, more positive. When it comes to the team relationship, sometimes emotions might be more reserved, but they generally are very sincere. And as usual, it all depends on the person, it all depends on the team, it all depends on the corporate culture. I wouldn't say all the Americans are the same, all the Russians are the same, all the, IT professionals are the same, all the youngsters are the same. It's never the same. As usually it happens with intercultural communication, you just have certain tendencies. They might work, they might not, but this is what I have experienced myself, and this is what I wanted to share with you. Hope it was useful.